Hi, praise be to God. The word of the Lord today is about God's blessing. This video is the first part of the message about God's blessing. The next video will be the last part about this message. The title of this video is called Overflowing Blessing. I'm going to start off by saying that a person with God's blessing will have God's favor on their lives. They will have God's protection, God's peace, and so much more. The Lord will be with them in everything they do, and they will prosper in whatever they do. The Bible says in the book of Psalms chapter 1 verse 1 to 3 that blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. In the Bible, David was blessed. His heart and mind were towards God. Whatever he did prospered. Joseph too was blessed. He had the favor of God on his life. In Egypt, where he was enslaved, he had favor with his owners, first in Potiphar's house, then in the prison, and even in the palace. If a person has a blessing of God in their lives, whoever is connected to that person will benefit from that blessing. So basically, that person has an overflowing blessing which flows to others. Let's take Joseph for example in the book of Genesis chapter 39. When he came to Potiphar's house, the Bible says in verse 5 that from the time he put him in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. And also Jacob in the book of Genesis received God's blessing from his father Isaac. When he went to live with his uncle Laban, God blessed Laban. The little Laban had, God increased it greatly because of Jacob. Both Potiphar and Laban did not know God. They served other gods, but God blessed them because the person living with them had God's blessing on their lives. Notice that God only blessed the part where the blessed person was or was placed. For example, going back to the book of Genesis, chapter 39, verse 5, the word says that from the time he was put in charge of his household and of all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. So since Joseph was in charge of all Potiphar's household, the Lord blessed the entire household of Potiphar because Joseph was in charge. And in Genesis chapter 30 verse 30, Jacob says to his uncle Laban that the little you had before I came has increased greatly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I have been. So God only blessed the parts where Jacob was. God will care about the people who the blessed person cares about. Since God's blessing means God's protection, God's favor, and much more, God will make sure that he takes care of the people in that person's life. For example, the Bible says that the Lord saved Noah and his entire household from the flood. The Bible only mentions Noah to be the righteous one, but God made sure that he saved all those that Noah cared about. To be blessed does not mean to have things, to have stuff. For example, Jesus was blessed by God, but had nothing on this earth. His disciples too were blessed. The Apostle Paul too was blessed. Jeremiah, all blessed by God, but had nothing really. God's blessing might lead to having more things, and sometimes that might not happen. For example, God blessed Abraham, that he acquired a lot of wealth. But Jeremiah the prophet did not have any wealth. In fact, the Lord forbade him from having anything, even taking a wife, because of the times he was living in. But God made sure that he protected him. He gave him favor. He was favored by the king of Babylon. God always rescued him from trouble. God even helped those who helped him. There are times in the Bible when God's blessing will not flow on the people connected to the person who's blessed. For example, if a person connected to the blessed person does not want to be a part of the blessed person's life. Let me use an example. In the book of Genesis, the two men who were engaged to Lot's daughters refused to leave Sodom. The moment they refused to leave Sodom with Lot's family, God could no longer protect them. The other time is when a person connected to the blessed person becomes their enemy. For example, Absalom rebelled against his father David. He wanted to kill his father for the throne. Although his father loved him so much and did not want any harm to come to him, God killed him. The Bible says in the book of 2 Samuel chapter 18 verse 15 that, "And 10 young men, Joab's armor-bearers, surrounded Absalom and struck him and killed him." Though the Bible says that Joab's armor-bearers done it, it was really God's doing. When a person is blessed by God, that person's enemies become God's enemies, and that person's friends become God's friends. So since Absalom had become an enemy to his father David, he had also become an enemy to God.